First of all, I would like, oops, I got the recording. That's fine. And by the way, you're free to share my presentation. In fact, I would love it if you could share it with as many people as you can. I'd like to first of all thank Greg for the invite to your meeting, and also Jim. One of the things that I've done since the first of the year when I took over this program, I'm doing about 3 or 4 Zoom meetings a week. I had huge support from our section managers to push my presentation out to various clubs. And what I really enjoy doing is sitting in on the club meetings. And there's just such a diversity of how meetings are conducted, and the size of meetings and everything else. And I love the way, the roll call around the introductions. Not everybody does that. I thought that was fantastic. And I would also like to compliment the Zoom arrangement. It's fantastic, the setup. And I also like the combination of in present and Zoom together. I think that's a fantastic idea. And so I commend you guys. And obviously your numbers look really good. I think we've got something like 13 on Zoom, and probably almost an equal number or more there at your location where you're having the meeting. So with that being said, let me see if I can work this out with Greg to screen share and bring up my presentation.
Yeah, you should have that capability.
Okay, let me just do that. And now what I have to do is find my presentation. There it is. And let me make it big. And can everybody see it?
Excellent. Yes.
Fantastic. Okay. Let me just give you just a very brief background of who I am and where I came from. Born and raised in Peoria, Illinois, flyover country. I attended Bradley University. I graduated as an electrical engineer, and I spent my entire career, I retired about 4 years ago, in the power generation industry: gas turbines, steam turbines, hydro turbines, geothermal turbines. And I loved it. I didn't want to retire, but I had to get some serenity in my life while I was still healthy. And here I am. And I'll go on and explain in a few minutes how I got myself into this, because it wasn't something I had really foresaw or planned. But I've been a ham radio operator 60 years this year. It's one of the hobbies that has not come and go like many hobbies. I've done a lot of things. I've been blessed with a lot of opportunities to do a lot of neat things. I fly airplanes. I sail sailboats. I'm a musician, and a lot of these have come and go. But one thing that has had permanence in my life from the time I was 12 years old to today has been this wonderful hobby that we're all in. And I can't tell you how much I am enjoying it even more now that I'm retired. It's just fantastic. I'm just as excited working Bouvet and Crozet as I was many years ago, and it's just a blessing to have had this hobby. The way I got into it, real quickly, I was, as a grade schooler, I was dating this young lady and went over to her house, and her father actually was an engineer. He worked for Caterpillar Tractor Company in Peoria, and he took me downstairs and he showed me his rig. And I'll tell you, he got on and worked a few DX stations, and I hook, line, and sinker. I said, I got to do this, and I did, and it was just fantastic. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to try to keep this to about 30 minutes or so, and then I leave it open for questions. I'm not going to cover everything in minute detail. I'd like to give you a sort of a 30,000 foot presentation of what this program is all about. And it is a program, it is not a contest. And I'll explain that in a little bit. There are roughly 800,000 amateur radio operators in the US. And believe it or not, I was just up at Hamcation, and as part of my presentation, I found this video. It was kind of interesting. It shows over the last 22 years how our hobby, country by country, has grown. And believe it or not, we are still growing, not by huge strides, but we are growing just about 800,000 in the US. Japan, for example, back 20 years ago was the number one country with the most ham radio operators. They had 1.4 million, and 22 years later, they got about 450,000. So you can see how the bar chart when I showed this video, how it decreased, and of course, you would expect China's coming up. Thailand, believe it or not, is growing very, very rapidly, and it's just kind of interesting. But total, there's probably 2.7, 2.8 million of us, and I would argue that a good percentage of those people that call this their hobby do DXing. They are on HF and they do DXing. I don't know how many, and I don't really care how many, but I know, like it was for me, it was a bug. And I would argue if anybody has a radio and anybody has a license and anybody's operating, whether you got a dipole or whether you got a 100-foot Yagi or quad or whatever, you probably do a little DXing. And what I'm going to try to present to you today, and I want you to be honest with me at the end of my presentation. I'm going to present to you why I think anybody that has a radio that's
Hey,
not a
Mark?
license. Yes.
I don't know what happened to your audio. You were nice and clean and clear, and all of a sudden you got really muddy sounding.
Well, I'm up in Colorado at 9,000 feet for
Okay,
a week.
now you sound good.
Okay, I'm normally in South Florida, and I'd really rather be in South Florida because it was -9 this morning, and we've got about 250 inches year to date of snow. So,
Mark, Mark, I think it was just the position of the mic on your headset. So,
okay, I'll try to hold it right here then and see if I can keep it. Thank you, Greg, for that. Let's see, where was I? So, I guess what I'd like you to do at the end of my presentation in the Q&A is tell me if you've got a radio and you're operating HF, not to poo-poo anybody that likes VHF or UHF or moon mounts or whatever, but if you have an HF radio and you're operating, I want you to tell me why you would not give this program a shot, why you wouldn't put in a submission at the end of the year, and I'll explain what that all means in a second. Like me, I've been operating in this program about 7 years before I took this position, and I did it not because I wanted a plaque or I wanted a certificate. I wanted a metric on how I did from year to year in working DX. I used to work for a guy many years ago, and he had a super impression on me. He says, Mark, if you can't measure it, it's not worth doing. And what this program basically allows you to do, and what I did for 7 years, is it gave me a metric of how I was doing in the DXing from year to year to year to year to year. Because as you're going to see, it's a very simple program. If you don't remember anything else that I talked about tonight, remember simple, because this is a very simple program. You work a country, it's 1 point. You work a CU zone, it's 1 point. At the end of the year, you tally everything, and that's your point. So I went from year to year to year to year, and each year I was a little bit better. 2 years ago, I was like 187. Last year, which is the last year I'll be able to participate, because I can't now because I'm heading up the program, but I was actually at 280, 287. And I mean, that gives me a lot of self-satisfaction to know, A, I was on the air, B, my equipment upgrades that I did was really working well, and C, that I was spending a fair amount of time during the year doing what I love to do, and that's working DX. So for me, there's a lot of reasons why people DX, but I've talked to many people like old fogies like me that says, I got the DXCC, I got the honor roll. Why should I work DX? This program, I'll explain, it makes sense. Or how about if you are somebody that is in a restricted community, or maybe you don't have the financial resources to afford a linear amplifier or a tower and a Yagi. I'm going to show you with this program, you can still have a ball working DX
and tallying up how you're doing from year to year. Or if you want to compete, there's an opportunity to compete against like equipped stations all over the world. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. So let me just, we have a dilemma, a DX dilemma. What do we do if we've been working a lot or we have all these plaques or whatever? This program I'm going to show you, I'm going to skip ahead of here just a couple. This program is stress-free DXing. It's very, very simple. You know, one last thing I'll mention, I used to be a big contester, and I still love contesting because I'm fundamentally a very competitive person. But, you know, in my retirement, I'm trying to bring more serenity in my life. I got 3 grandchildren in Wellesley, and my wife and I go up there all the time. And you know, I want to bring serenity in my life. So this program allows me to still do the thing I love and not get holed up in a contest over a weekend for 48 hours. You know, I kind of enjoy it, but I kind of say, you know, I've done that, and I kind of just want to get on and work other stations, and I love DX. And if you are a contester, anything that you work on a contest, you can also apply to this program as well, and I'll explain that. Okay, let's get to the program. What is DX Marathon? Well, first of all, before I tell you what it's about, it is the fastest growing ham radio DX program today in the world. And the reason I say that is year to year, year over year, from 2021 to 2022, our program, as measured by the number of participants or the number of submissions, grew 32%. 32% in a market that's relatively flat. So it is growing. The year before, we grew at 15%. Now, some of that had to do with Cycle 25 coming in, of course, but I think there's a lot of other reasons as well. Okay, what is DX Marathon? Let's get down, cut to the chase here.
Mark, your audio's gone muffled again.
I'm sorry. I haven't moved here, and I think it probably is my internet. I apologize for that, and I hope it is.
No, it's better now, Mark. It's just mic position to your mouth, I think.
But believe it or not, the mic is in the computer. I just have a Bluetooth headset here. So.
Oh, okay. I thought you had a boom mic.
I don't have a boom mic, so okay, I'll try to keep it a little more consistent here. So, okay, so what is the DX Marathon? It is an annual event. It's an annual program. January 1st, the clock starts. December 31st, the clock stops. In between those dates, what you do is you get on the air and you work countries, the 340 DXCC countries, and then we add a few more, which I'll explain in a subsequent slide. So there's 346 DXCC entities, and there's 40 CQ zones, and you work as many as you can. And at the end of the year, you tally them up, and that's your score. One big advantage of our program is we do not require confirmations. No QSL cards required. No LOTW required, no EQSL required. We base it on an honest population of ham radio. Now we do some checking, and I'm going to explain this too. So we understand in a program like this, if we don't require confirmations, we must ensure to those participants that there's not cheating going on, and that we have some checks that we do, and we do that, and I'll explain those in a second. It's an excellent reason to get on the air and work DX. Again, you can compete with others if you wish, with similar kinds of equipment, or you can just do it to say, how am I doing year to year, like I explained a little bit earlier. No complicated rules, simple. It is a global event. About 30% of the participants are US based, and about 70% are international based, spread out among the various CQ zones. Let me just touch for 2 minutes on the history. Believe it or not, this program has been around a long time. It was originated in 1939 by the predecessor of CQ magazine. It's called Radio Magazine. They ran the program for 1 year, and World War II broke out. It died. World War II ended. They brought it back out in 1948, It ran for 1 year and they dropped it for whatever reasons. Coincidentally, that year in 49, the CQ Worldwide was introduced and DXCC was introduced. So maybe it had something to do with that. In 2005, the program was resurrected by one Bob Locher, W9KNI. He's written a couple really neat books on DX. If you haven't read them, I would encourage you. And he approached CQ Magazine. He said, hey, let's bring it back. And CQ said, well, have at it, Bob. So Bob sat down and he reconstructed the rules and the categories that subsequently has changed a little bit. But Bob's a very smart guy, and he realized how much work it was going to take to administer the program. So what he did is he recruited one young John Sweeney, K9EL. John has been administering the program for 17 years. He is an amazing guy. He's a great DXer. He has given so much to this program and to our hobby that I put him up on a pedestal. I knew John through a mutual friend of mine down in Florida. And when I heard this, I called him up. I was retired. I was kind of looking for something to do. And I talked to him about 30 minutes. And after that discussion, I said, John, I can't do this. I said, I want serenity in my life. You know, I retired. It's incredible how much this man has done. So I thought about it for a little bit. I didn't want to see the program die. And I said, John, I was in an EVP for 17 years in my industry. And I built up some businesses and did various things and grew companies. And I said, look, let me put a structure together. I think we can do this if I can redefine the tasks and responsibilities associated with this program. I think we might be able to do it. So John and I worked for almost 4 months, and I came up with a sort of like a business plan. And what I did is I formed a board of directors. I kept Bob and John on the board as emeritus members, but I got people that I knew were in this, that were familiar with this program, that had been participating for 15 years or longer, that were veteran DXers, that had their ticket for more than 25, 30, 40 years. And this is my board, okay? But really, the next slide, this is the heart and soul. I created operating managers. John and I worked on this. I got a score. John did a whole process chart, and I said, what are the key functions that it takes to administer this program? So a scoring manager, an IT manager, communications manager, rules and compliance, and awards. And I'm 6 months ahead of where I thought I'd be, because I got some phenomenal volunteers. And this team is in place now. We actually did all the scoring in the 2022. John had agreed to stay on through 2023 and finish up in the scoring. We actually had developed, Larry Lowen, W07R, developed a new scoring tool, and we actually scored it. So we're like 6 months ahead of schedule, and I'm just elated. Last thing I did is I formed an advisory board, because 70% of our participants are international. So I felt like I needed somebody when we did make rule changes or expansions to the program. I needed somebody to sound it off of that was not a U.S. person, but could represent their particular region of the world. So anyway, enough on organization. Why participate? Okay. Again, ham radio, at least to many of us, is all about DXing. The DX Marathon challenges us to work the world every year. The clock restarts on January 1st. Simple, simple, simple. No multipliers, no complicated formulas, no QSL. You work one country, one zone, 1 point, 1 point. And I might add, it is very, very ideal for clubs. When you put your submission in at the end of the year, you put a club affiliation on it. We summate all the scores of the clubs, and then we rank the scores. And we had 133 submissions of clubs throughout the world this year, which is an all-time record. I am going to spend a lot of time encouraging clubs to participate. It's great for camaraderie. I even have clubs like your size that'll form sub-teams and they'll kind of compete among one another, and it's your annual event or your Christmas party. You give out awards depending on how each team did. It's great for clubs. Okay, how does it work? Okay, at the end of the year, you complete a form and you submit it to, and I'm going to talk about that in a second, not in great detail, but I'm going to show you how simple it is. Okay, so I mentioned earlier 1 point for the 340 DXCC entities. What our program does is it adds 6 of the Work to All Europe entities, which includes those countries there: Italian Africa, Shetland Islands, Sicily, TA1, Turkey, ITU Vienna, and Bear Island. So 346, obviously they're not all, a lot of these entities are not activated every year. So they're all legitimate DXCC entities plus these 6. So there's 346 of those entities, and there's 40 CQ zones. So in a perfect world, you could possibly, given every single entity was activated, which will never happen, the total possible score is 386. Normally in our program, the winners in our various categories will achieve 300 to 315. I think the highest score ever was like 325. So that's pretty amazing. All right. These next slides are sort of the heart and soul of why I said what I did a little bit earlier, and that was the program is designed to motivate anybody to participate in it. So what we do is, first thing we do is we try to create level playing fields among operators. You got people like myself. I got a remote station. I've been blessed with a nice tower and antenna stacked, and linear amplifier, unlimited. You do anything you want. About 70% of our participants are in the unlimited. But I look at ham radio operators in the 2.8 million I described. If you look at a bell-shaped curve, I think the people that the bulk of the ham radio operators are in the plus and minus 2 sigma area. Probably 90% are in the middle. They may not have any linear amplifiers. They may be in an HOA restricted area. They may not have the financial resources to spend a lot of money on these things. So we create an opportunity for people that are running 100 watts, and 100 watts with Yagis, all right, with arrays and wires. And then we create another, which is just 100 watt with no gain antennas, simple wires and verticals. And then finally, we have a QRP category. So depending on where you are in terms of what your operating equipment is, you enter and pick one of these, and then you are compared against like equipped people throughout the world. So that's the first reason I said it's pretty. The second reason is, okay, so you got the tranches in mind that I just described. Now, in addition to that, if you want to focus on one band, you can choose to do that. We have people that compete, that declare 60 meters is all they want to compete on. You're then competing with 60-meter operations throughout the world. Or you can have all bands, or you can compete on 6, or you can compete on 160. You can choose and select a band. Then, we've got a few people out there, and I've got to run into them. They don't like FT8 modes. They don't like the digital mode. Yeah, I represent our hobby since I've been in it for 60 years, is all about innovation. And I operate FT8, but my preferred mode is CW. I always like CW first, FT8 second, and sideband third. If you want to compete on CW only, you can do that. If you want to compete on sideband, you can do that. If you want to compete on FT8 or digital, you can do that. So you can select the mode, you can select the band, you can be all bands or sim. And again, I already mentioned the club. So these 2 slides kind of represent, hey, no matter where you are in terms of your HF abilities or resources, here's a place for you to participate. Okay. Oops, I'm going the wrong way here. All right. Okay, I'm only going to point out 2 things on this slide. We do have a restriction that you must operate from a single site. Let me give you a perfect example. I have an HF station here in Florida because I'm in an HOA community. When I put in a submission, I cannot sum the two stations in all the queues that I made from both stations. I only can select one, or I can put two submissions in. I can put one in out here, or I can put one in Florida. That's okay. All right. I spend 5 months out here, and that's my choice. So all we require is one station. We just don't want remotes and remote receivers all over, because that takes us off of the level playing field. All right. And the other thing I want to point out on this is we just last Friday, right before Hamcation, we did a major rebuild of our website. I heard you talking about we had one of your websites kind of white and red letters and black letters. Check this website out. My IT manager, Sebastian, did a phenomenal. He's a professional. He's a consultant. And anyway, it's www.dxmarathon.com. What you don't hear tonight, that we've got more resources, whether you participate in the program or not. Just check out that site. It will be amazing what information is on there. Okay, so all of us use logging programs. I happen to use DX Labs. I love Dave's program, but it doesn't matter. Most of it, if you paper log, we can take care of you too. But most of us today use Ham Radio Deluxe, or we use Dave's, or we use N1MM, or there's a lot out there. Basically, all you do at the end of the year is you quantify this year 2023 queues, and you generate an ADIF file. Very simple to do, actually. Dave makes it Dave AA6YQ in DX Labs. He has a bunch of tools. He's a DX Marathon supporter, and he built into his software some amazing tools that we can check our progress. And I won't go into that right now, but basically you generate the ADIF, and then without going into much detail, we can provide you with tools. Very simple. It takes 10 minutes to convert this ADIF file into, this is an Excel spreadsheet, and it loads all your data into here. Basically, this spreadsheet has 346 entries on the column, and then 40 CQ zones, and it folds in all your queues that you're declaring as your worked countries and work zones. And then once that's finished, you go to our www.dxmarathon.com and you upload this file, and you're finished. Okay, submissions occur between January 1st and January 5th. We score everything. We issue a preliminary score, and then we go into doing some due diligence, which I'll explain in a second. And then on April 1, I have to have all the results into CQ Magazine, and then they publish it June the 1st. And the awards, or the plaques, or everybody that's participated will go into that summary. All clubs will go into that summary as well. Okay, I'm going to kind of skip by this. Okay, I want to talk about verification. The honor system is fundamental and important to our club because we do not require verifications of queues. And trust me, John over the years has developed some amazing tools in our new scoring program. We have a way, for example, on the Expedition, we can go and we can automatically pull club log. And if you declare, you've worked a K8H or FT8WW or 3J0Y, we can go in there and we can check, we can verify. I probably received 6 or 8 logs already just myself this year for individuals that did DXpeditions. They just sent us their logs in ADIF file, and we can check. So we do some checking, and we're in this to have fun, but we've just got to keep people honest, or we got to identify if anybody's cheating the system. We just got to do something. There's really no penalties involved in this program. If you have a broken call or you work a pirate, we encourage everybody to check their logs at the end of the year. But if you work a pirate and declare that as a CQ zone, or if you make a mistake in listing a station in the wrong CQ zone, all we do is deduct 1 point. We don't throw you out. We don't throw your logs out. So we're here to have fun. We don't want to be anal about this, but you know, that's all I'm going to say on this. We do issue plaques, and I'm not going to go through any of this detail. It's all on the website. We issue 120 certificates for various things because we think recognition is important. And again, this is all detail that I do not want to cover in this because it's just too much. We are all volunteers. We have no funding. CQ Magazine does not give us a penny. We have very generous clubs, and we have generous individuals that sponsor our plaques. I have needs for some sponsors. Basically, a sponsorship is $100. It pays for the plaque, and it pays for transportation to the recipient. On the website, I have a PayPal click, because we're thinking about doing some significant expansions in 2024. And if you are so inclined, you can hit the PayPal and throw in $5 or $10 or any amount. And we're going to accumulate that during 2023 and see how we're doing. And that'll kind of dictate what we can do in 2024. So other than that, by the way, you don't have to sign up for this either. If you just start keeping track of your DX contacts, and at the end of the year, you know, say I'm gonna put a submittal in, and the tools are all there for you to do that. Okay. These next two slides are kind of interesting. If you look at cycle 24, you know, and we're now in cycle 25. Even though cycle 24 was not too attractive, our submission stayed relatively the same. And if you think about that, you know, everybody is kind of either enhanced or penalized by what the solar flux is doing. So when solar flux 24 was down, we still had our people, our scores were a little bit down, but it's still a fun thing to do. Okay. Cycle 25 is coming in like a lion, as most of you know. This red line was the forecast, and December of 22 is the actual. It's really good. Okay. And the good news is it will hopefully continue to be good for the next, who knows, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. So, man, DXing is going to be a lot of fun in the next 6 to 8 years. Another reason to jump into this program. Okay. As you might expect, the FT8 expansion has made it possible for those with less fortunate, expensive equipment, or those that are constrained to HOAs, to participate in DXing in combination with cycle 25. So the FT8 certainly has an impact. We still have our CW, we still have our phone, and as you might expect, the DX bands in the second slide here, we get 17 through 20 is very popular. This last year, I can say though, the 2022 submissions versus 2021, the 10, 12, and 15 meter submissions increased 4 times. That's cycle 25. 20 meters was about the same. Okay, I'm almost finished here. This is 2021. We had 807 logs submitted, 144,000 queues posted on those logs. The red that you see there is what happened in 2022. We had a 32% increase, 1182, 216,505 queues. The highest score in 2021 was 314. Our preliminary this year is about 317. Believe it or not, a lot of people that are participating are checking their logs. These aren't cheaters. These are just mistakes. So we encourage everybody at the end of the year, you know, get your zones right. You know, if you use a logging program that uses QRZ, I went through my log. I happen to use QRZ in Dave's DX Keeper. I found a 1% error rate in wrong QRZ zones or CQ zones. I used a DX for Win database, which uses 81C, which is Jim's database, which John K9EL tells me it's the best and most accurate databases. I identified 3,000 Qs that had wrong prefixes and wrong zones. I corrected my log. I went through each one and corrected all of them because I don't want bad stuff in my log. But you got to be careful there. Check your CQ zones on your zone submissions. As you can see, these were the top 3 scores in 2021. We had 133 submissions in 2022. Just to show you the interest in the clubs, that top score in 2022 was about 39,000. Pretty amazing. So, okay, this is a lot of detail here. 81C has these are conversion tools. I'm just going to stop on this one. Sebastian has made a web-based tool that allows you, whether you're on Mac, whether you're on PC or Linux operating systems, you take your ADIF file, you upload it to his program, and it spits out this beautiful report. And after you check it, that little arrow at the top right says generate submissions. You hit that and it produces that Excel spreadsheet. And at the end of the year, boom, you load it up to our website and you're finished. This is a powerful tool that he's developed. This is actually my score in 2022. Okay, let me get on here with it. You know, we have a user, Paula, K9IR. She wrote in an, I forgot to mention, we do have a Group.io webpage or a website also, Group.io. Just go to Group.io and you can search for DX Marathon. But I thought this was excellent. I'll let you just read it. And I sort of talked about that a little bit. She just does it because it supports her club and it gives her a metric. In summary, the website, check that out for a lot more information, give you a feel for what it's all about. Email me, wc3w@dxmarathon.com. If you got any questions, and I'm here to answer any questions right now. Well, one more thing. As I mentioned, in 2024, we've got a lot of ideas, but it just depends on how much resources we have, how much time we have, how much contribution. Some of this is going to cost a little money. Half marathon, maybe run it 6 months and 6 months. A decathlon where we look at a 5-year rolling average, you know, and make an award based on that. We got a lot of, there's a lot we can do with this. So with that, I am going to shut this down and open the floor up, Greg, for questions.
Okay, if anybody has any questions, great presentation, Mark. Thank you very much. If anybody has any questions, please unmute and ask away. Or from the hall there.
Yep.
Yes, I have a question. How do clubs participate when they don't have a base station for a club?
You do not need a base station for a club. And what I'm doing, I've just drafted up the 2024 rules because the 2023 rules and previous rules were not very clear on what is a club. I am very bullish on club participation. And what I am probably going to do for 2024, first of all, I'm going to tranche the clubs, because somebody that has 200 members competing against a club that has 25 members, it's not fair. So my vision is to take and maybe go 25, I don't know, don't quote me on the numbers, 25 and above, 25 to 15, 15 and smaller. Now, to directly answer your question is, you don't have to have a club station. It's the participants in the club that enter. You, in the submission form, you name your club and then we assimilate that. So each individual club member uses their own station and we just sum them up and we come up with a club total.
So it's like on field day, you can do a club aggregate score.
Exactly the same.
Okay, gotcha.
So in other words, we wouldn't be using W1 BIM.
No, you would use every one of your members who puts in a submission. There's a line on the submission form, club affiliation. All we ask, and I'm changing this rule here because believe it or not, this is still a manual process. We ask the president or the leadership, if you are going to put in a club score, make it the same for everyone. Okay, in other words, for you, we don't want somebody putting in Central Massachusetts Amateur Radio, or use your acronym. See,
Same name.
Same name, same name,
Yeah.
same name. And because we're thinking about automating this so that we don't have to manually do it.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Anybody else?
I couldn't have covered it that well.
Anybody on Zoom have any questions?
I got to
Wow.
ask the question: Is anybody not gonna? Is anybody that's operating HF and DX?
Why not? You have nothing to lose, right?
Okay, Dickie's got one more question.
I got one
Okay.
more question on 160 meters. I know
Yes, sir.
that's a tough band, and I'm
Yes,
just
it is.
wondering. I know it took very little. It was very little showing on the slide, but it looked to me like it was all CW and not phone. Is that true?
No, that's not true at all. We have it's just like every band. We have participants that will do just CW. We'll have all modes for sure. And by the way, on 160, I gave one presentation to actually it was the South Florida DX Association. I needed 2 plaques to sponsor. They both stepped up. I got one for 6 meters. We had 160 and 6 meters were just a certificate. I said, why? Those people that do work 160 and 60, they're working hard too. I want to make them a plaque. So I got 2 sponsors and I got plaques now for the top individual on 160 and 6 meters. So to answer your question, we have a lot of single band that operate. We have, believe it or not, we got a fair number that just do 60 meters too. They just love 60 meters.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other takers? George.
I have a question. How about satellite work? Would that be included or would that not be included?
No, it's not included.
Okay.
Yeah, satellite work, DMR, everything's out. It's HF. It's HF,
Okay.
3 modes basically. Yep.
Hey, Mark, could you unshare so we could see everybody?
Oh, I'm sorry. I normally do that.
No problem.
There you go. Sorry.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
All right, is everybody awake?
We are.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mark, for the great presentation.